And now to our speakers for the afternoon session. In 2013, Andrea was selected to fight the Morley and Outwood constituency held by Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls. Do you remember him? Having campaigned full-time as a candidate, all our hard work paid off in the 2015 general election, when she brought Ed Balls' political career to an end. Well done. She gained the constituency with a majority of 422 votes. In 2017, at the general election, she increased her majority to 2,104 votes. And in December, just 3 months ago, her majority increased to 11,267 votes. Andrea has not just been a hit in Outwood and Morley, but she has made her mark in the competitive political environment of the House of Commons. She was quickly appointed a parliamentary private secretary, but in May 2018, she became the first MP to resign from a government post to focus on fighting for Brexit. In the chamber of the House of Commons, she asked Theresa May, "Can the Prime Minister inform the House at what point it was decided that Brexit means Remain?" She went on to become the first Conservative MP in the chamber of the House of Commons to call for Theresa May's resignation. Philip Hammond, sitting on the front bench. You remember him? No. Former Chancellor, former Conservative Member of Parliament. He was seen to mutter, "Stupid woman." Yeah. Not quite parliamentary language, but that's what he said. I believe he was referring to Andrea, not Theresa. Who's stupid now, Mr. Hammond? Regrettably, in the 2019 general election campaign, Andrea was subjected to abuse and intimidation. But she's still here, and she's still fighting. She's fighting for the cause that unites every one of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrea does not come from a conventional Tory background. She didn't go to private school or university, but she did get a degree later in life from distance learning. She's a great Conservative and a great parliamentarian, and I would ask all of you to welcome the Vice Chairman of the ERG group of MPs, Andrea Jenkyns.
Thank you so much. I remember actually being at the Bruges Group event in Parliament, at conference a couple of years ago. And do you remember what it was like? It was all the fringe events was packed out, but the main conference hall was rather empty when we had our former Prime Minister. Now, you mentioned Berko. He actually came to our wedding. No, he's actually been a long-time friend of my husband for over 30 years, so it was quite interesting when I wrote in the media that he should resign, etc. So now it's great to be here, and actually I look around and there's so many Brexit heroes here in this room, and I think I'd like to start by paying tribute to you guys, and yourself, Robert, as well. I've seen Ivan at the front as well. Sir John Redwood, Sir Bill Cash, those Maastricht rebels. Can we please put our hands together for them? Because they're the reason we're here today. also got a friend in the audience, Gloria Martin. Everybody recognise Gloria? Stand up. No, Gloria was actually fighting many years ago for Jimmy Goldsmith's referendum party. So, I'm a novice at this. It's you guys out there who are the true heroes. So, now without your tireless campaigning, Brexit would certainly never have happened. And if you think back to the incredible challenges that we faced in the last year, that dreadful withdrawal agreement, as Robert's already mentioned, that toxic autumn. Now, when the UK political system, it was in disarray, it was in paralysis, and quite frankly, it was chaos. Now, we was at the point then where we thought we was going to lose Brexit. Do you remember? It was very nail-biting at those moments. But we got through it. We're here, we're smiling, and it made that moment on the 31st of January even sweeter. Now, did you all celebrate, by the way? Yeah. Now, what I did, I held a big Brexit bash in Morley. Will, over there, from my team, he organised it for me. We had over 400 people filling the rugby club, and about 30-odd media outlets were there, and at 11 o'clock, we went on to the field, the grounds of the rugby club, and we had an electric guitarist playing God Save the Queen, and we had fireworks. But what made it sweeter is those fireworks was paid by the EU. Now, that's thanks to Lucy Harris, who was MEP at the time, who wrangled that, so thank you, Lucy. Right, so now with this great victory that we have comes even greater responsibility. Now, it's to ensure that Brexit actually delivers for the 17.4 million people who voted for it. Now, we've still got choppy waters ahead. I think we'll all breathe a sigh of relief when it's December. But we need to make sure it delivers, as I've said. There's no doubt that some of our towns and communities in the Midlands and the North have really been left behind. The gap between London and the South East and the North has widened. Now, as you can tell from my accent, I'm a Yorkshire lass. But did you know that outside of London and the South East, you are likely to be less skilled and educated, earn less, have a house that's worth less, and have a lower life expectancy? Now, many of our supporters, both in the referendum and in the recent general election, backed our cause because it gave them hope and optimism for a better life. Now, for them and their families and for their communities. Now, whether you're in Morley, in my constituency, in Workingham, in Staffordshire, Essex, Hampstead, thousands of working class voters voted Conservative for the first time in their lives. Now, it's something that I take seriously. Now, they voted for a thriving country, for good healthcare, to feel safe in their homes, and so Pretty's doing a good job with that, and to stop these champagne socialists from rummaging through our pockets. Now, I'm proud to be part of the blue-collar Conservative movement that lay the foundations for that win. But I do think it's incumbent upon us in this room today, who are having argued for Brexit, that we shape the way our country turns out. Now, what could Brexit look like? Well, first of all, I'd like to see it end the PC culture that we have in Britain today. And then this feminist culture, I want us to be a country of meritocracy. Now, I understand earlier somebody spoke about fishing. Now I'm going to speak about fishing as well, because my grandfather was a fisherman over in Hull and Grimsby as well. And if we look at Grimsby, in the 1950s, it was a bustling and busy fishing port that actually fed the world. Now, if you look at it today, now, has anyone been to Grimsby from here? Yeah. Ah, brilliant. Right, I'm sure you'll agree that today it's a shadow of its former self. And, it's been reduced by the European Union regulations. Now, Grimsby's story is emblematic of the EU's demise. And actually, the EU is a failed economic experiment, in my opinion. Now, in the 1980s, the EU share of global economy was 30%. Now it's barely half that, and it's predicted to fall below 10% by 2050. Now, here in the UK, we have some of the richest waters in the world, as well as the globe's 12th longest coast. The EU have got our fishing industry right at the top of their agenda, and I think, it's important that we fight to ensure we do what's right for our British fishermen. Now, we need to restore our country's economic clout and put places like Grimsby back on the map, bringing jobs and wealth back to these forgotten communities. Now, our fishermen must come first, and we must become an independent coastal state, controlling our own waters by the end of this year. Now, we must ensure that British waters, first and foremost, are for British boats and British fishermen. If Brexit's to mean anything, then it must be that sort of impact on people's lives. To me, it's the impact on the ground that matters. Now to levelling up the economy. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, gets it. And isn't it great to have a Prime Minister who fought for Brexit and was actually, on our side? Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has spoken time and time again about levelling up those towns and communities that have always had the least. So it's time to seize these opportunities that await and truly make a success of Brexit so we can truly become a global Britain. But what does global Britain mean? Well, talking about trade, I know earlier a lot was spoken about trade, but it means striking out and forming trade deals with the emerging powerhouses of the global economy. Now, there's a whole world of buyers and sellers and markets out there, 7.8 billion people actually, and there's only 512 million in the EU, so I think we'll obviously continue to trade with them, but it's a bigger world out there, and we need to look beyond the shores of Europe to new horizons. Now, the vast majority of the 7.8 billion people who are still living in developing countries, but their economies are expanding at a much faster rate than the EU. In fact, outside of the EU, they are now creating 90% of global growth. And they call us Little Englanders. So global trade is not some abstract concept for Brexiteers to bang on about. It's a real and tangible concept. And I think that's what we really do have exciting times ahead for our country. Now, it's done more than any other single economic idea to raise billions out of poverty. In 1990, 37% of the world's population was in absolute poverty, and now that's less than 10%, which is amazing. But we've got concerns at the moment because protectionism, trade wars, and tariff and non-tariff barriers are today suffocating our global growth. Trade borders are springing up, and for the first time in years, world trading volumes are lagging behind global growth. Now, so the UK should become a global beacon of free trade. Providing leadership, we must lower tariffs and smash the iron curtain of protectionism that inhibits trade and clips the wings of our entrepreneurs. Now, where should we start? Well, we should start by not obsessing about the EU, like that gentleman did earlier, as being the only deal in town. We should look to America and the Commonwealth. Now, our old friends and partners in Australia, New Zealand, Canada are ready to do deals, and the US already buys 1/5 of everything that we export. Now, the Commonwealth has some of the fastest growing economies in the world, and a trade deal with these could benefit up to 2.5 billion people there. Now, as many of the Commonwealth countries are still developing, we'll be giving them a leg up out of poverty in the process. I always believe, trade before aid. That's the best way to lift countries out of poverty. And I think it's a much more progressive way as well. Now, for the doomsters and gloomsters out there, I think it's acceptable that we trade with Belgium's 11.5 million people than we do with India's 1.4 billion. I mean, is that crazy? I'd like to remind them that our trade with the Commonwealth was 4 times the size of our trade with Europe in the 1950s. So let us reach out to these new partners in Africa, Japan, and other Trans-Pacific Agreement countries, because Brexit gives us a rare golden opportunity to lead the world and lead Europe for that matter. And let us now have a new land of hope and glory, but of free trade. Now, it will improve our standing in the world, it will bring millions out of poverty, grow our economy, and encourage cooperation. The world needs a champion of free trade, and don't you think, guys, that should be us here in Britain? Yeah. Now, how can we, the second point is immigration. As I said earlier, I think Prit is doing a fantastic job. We've got a steely Home Secretary who's actually sticking up for our bobbies on the beat and standing up against civil servants and trying for years to get disabled access. You can get a training to Leeds, that's when they turn up on time, and then if you're disabled or got a prem or something, you can't come back to Morley because there's no disabled access. In this day and age, this is crazy. So I think we need to look at interconnectivity as well, connecting our local towns together. So if we're getting on with HS2, then we need to make sure that it's on budget, it's delivered on time, so we stop wasting taxpayers' money. But if we're getting on with HS2, we must get on with HS3, because this will help level up the north from east to west. Now, there's some other facts here. Did you know that Leeds is the biggest city in Western Europe that doesn't have a light rail system? And it's been under discussion since the 70s, which is crazy. And whenever trams have been introduced, such as Manchester, Sheffield or Edinburgh, they've been a great success. And I think it's crazy that we got rid of them in the 20th century. I think now's the time to really ensure we bring them back. Now, whilst we're talking about infrastructure, China's set to build 216 new airports by 2035, and we can't still decide on the third runway. I think that's crazy. If we want to be a truly global Britain, we need to make sure our airports are full capacity as well. We've got the capacity as well. And our Prime Minister's dear Boris Bridge from Scotland to Northern Ireland. Why not? Let's do it. But let's not have another 100-year discussion. Now, we need to become a nation of doers, not talkers. Actions speak louder than words, and only when we're able to level up, we can bring our country together. Now, at the turn of the 20th century, Liverpool, Glasgow, Manchester, Cardiff, Belfast and Birmingham were all global cities alongside London, and I think it's time to make them global cities once more. Now, let's turn to Britain's successes, which I always like talking about. We've had 3 years of misery and defeatism, but now that we've powered ourselves onto the 2020s and left the EU, I think it's in time to embrace the world. Now, I think we need to hear more from people like us in this room. We are the visionaries here. We can see ahead of what our country can look like in the future. And it'd be a bright and positive, optimistic future. Now, Britain's the 6th largest economy of the world, 7th in terms of industrial output. So don't let anyone tell you that we don't build anything anymore, because we do. We are 3rd in the world for inward foreign direct investment, 5th for outward investment, and we have the 5th highest defence spend in the world. And we know some of the best universities, and we've recently been ranked the 2nd most powerful and the 3rd most influential nation in the world. That's amazing. And this is, prior to Brexit, so it shows you the world's truly our oyster. Now, let us not forget we're also members of also a permanent member of the UN Security Council. We're a leading member of NATO, the Commonwealth, the G7, G20, the OSCE, the OECD, and of course we just regained our seat at the WTO. We are the 7th most visited nation on earth, and London's has the 2nd most international visitors of any city globally. Now, I'm proud of these statistics. We're 15th on the Global Happiness Index. Maybe that guy wasn't earlier, but I think we are here. And if we look at the coronavirus, it's scientists at Imperial College London who are actually at the forefront of a global effort to create a vaccine, which is amazing. Now, ill health has been one of the greatest barriers to the prosperity of individuals and nations, and between 2000 and 2015, an estimated 524 billion was lost from global GDP as a result of malaria. Now, I went across to Kenya a couple of years ago, and I saw it firsthand. I mean, a child dies there every 2 minutes from malaria. But Britain's leading this fight against malaria, through political leadership and funding and science and research, such as the new insecticides at Liverpool Innovation Vector Control Consortium and GSK's development of the world's first malaria vaccine. That was done here in the UK. So we are leading and tackling malaria, and I think it epitomises Great Britain at its best. Now, finally, to conclude, we are home to the Industrial Revolution, the jet engine, the telephone, the internet, the television, trains, penicillin, parliamentary democracy, the World Wide Web, the pedal bike, punk culture, ATMs, common law, DNA, the Higgs boson particle, gravity, computing, the light bulb, and let's not forget we're home to the most widely recognised language. Now, there's nothing a global Britain isn't capable of achieving. Now, we've delivered the letter of instruction to the British people, but I think now it's time to capture that spirit, the spirit of Britishness. Now, at the forefront globally, champion free trade and creating a better life for our children and grandchildren, as well as millions of people around the world. But I think Europe and the rest of the world will thank us for it in the months and years to come. Watch this space. Now, with our newly regained powers and, of course, newfound freedoms, along with boundless optimism and unending talents, the ingenuity and creativity of every man, woman and child on these islands, we can become the open, tolerant, outward-looking, giving, warm and welcoming Britain that we all want to see. So I say let's bring on Global Britain. Thank you.
Well done.